Good afternoon. I'm Julie Decker, President and CEO of the FSU Alumni Association, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our second episode of our Wednesday webinar series. This series was planned to offer you guidance from notable alumni who have relevant knowledge and advice to share in areas in which they specialize. Now more than ever, it's important to maintain a strong connection to our community, and thank you for allowing FSU Alumni Association to serve as that resource for you during this important time. Remember, you stand with a community of 358,000 fellow alumni bonded by a deep love for and commitment to our great university. Many of you joining us today are members of the Alumni Association, and I thank you. We simply could not do what we do today without your support and membership. Thank you. I have the great pleasure today of introducing our presenter, Dr. Therese Kemper. Therese Skubic Kemper is a 2006 Florida State graduate of the doctoral program in clinical psychology. She is currently an associate professor at Florida State University and the associate director of the Department of Psychology's Outpatient Community Clinic, the primary clinical training site for graduate students in the clinical psychology program. Therese's primary role is to supervise graduate students in their provision of evidence-based assessment and treatment services to members of the Tallahassee community. She is also involved in program development, community outreach, and teaching of the graduate class techniques of clinical supervision. In addition, Therese has been an active member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers since 2014. She has trained graduate students and a variety of health service professionals, including physicians, nurses, social workers, and mental health counselors in motivational interviewing and evidence-based practice to assist in health behavior change. She has also served in several consulting roles to develop MI curriculum, guides, webinars, and resources for training series delivered through several state of Florida agencies. Today, she will discuss the importance of mental health. And I think right now in particular, it's such a wonderful time to hear from one of our own experts on a topic like this. She's going to talk to us about the benefits of a routine, preparing your body for sleep in this time when schedules are off. And Dr. Kemper, I think this is such an important topic. We're so thankful for you taking the time to join us today. And I look forward to hearing from you on this topic. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. What I thought I would do first is start with a text from one of my friends. She sent a text to our friend group, a friend group of psychologists, just about a week and a half ago. And her text said, "So someone tell me honestly, what is a psychologist supposed to actually say to people, to patients, to ourselves right now?" So I don't share this to send everyone into a panic and to make people think this is hopeless, but I do share it to show that this is a time of very real, very intense shared stress. We will all probably have our moments of mini freakouts, maybe even major freakouts. That's okay. There is something we can do about that. There are things we can do to cope, and I will share hopefully some useful tips on coping with you today. So there are three main things that I'd like to cover in the next about 25 minutes. The first is the importance of a routine. The second is how to cope, specific strategies on how to cope with your emotions and with being home and the changes that we're going through right now. And then third, when to seek help and where to seek help if additional support is needed. So regarding the importance of a routine, it is well established, well documented that keeping a routine of eating, of enjoyable activity, and of sleep is critical for physical and mental health. It really lays a solid foundation for physical and mental health. These routines keep our body feeling healthy. They ensure that we have adequate amounts of rest and energy. The routines provide us with mental breaks and some time to recharge. And they also can provide us with surges of those pleasure hormones and other hormones that help us to regulate our moods and emotions. So a regular routine is really, really, like I said, the foundation for physical and mental health. And having just said that, for most of us, our schedules have gone out the window. Many of us are working from home. And if we're not working from home, we're probably working more or in a more stressful environment than maybe we're used to. So our schedules are out the window. And then on top of that, many of us are experiencing high levels of stress. And stress can cause very easy and very fast dysregulation of those routines. And so we may find ourselves, we crave sweets more, we crave snacks more, we overeat or don't eat enough. We might drink more alcohol, have more naps, or even have trouble sleeping. And for one reason or another, maybe we were forced to, or maybe we just don't have the energy or the interest, we have stopped participating in activities that we enjoy. So we clearly have an uphill battle in terms of sticking to these routines in the face of working from home or just in the environment that we're in right now, and in the face of some serious stress. So I will hopefully give you some strategies for sticking to a schedule as if you are living your usual day. That will be a little bit difficult, but the closer we can get to our regular day in terms of a schedule, the better off we will be. So in terms of eating, many of you are probably familiar with the recommendations of eating at regular times throughout the day, having 3 meals and 2 snacks. Now, good nutrition is vital for our immune system and for helping us just feel generally well, but I am not going to tell you not to snack. As long as your physician or your nutritionist has said it's okay, throw in a few snacks, give yourself a break, and try as best you can to eat a balanced diet. One tip that people may be less familiar with is the idea of eating when we're eating. So again, now that many of us are at home, we may find ourselves eating in front of the TV, eating during webinars, eating during meetings, while we're reading, whatever it is we're doing. And that can really distract us, cause us to overeat, cause us to eat things that we don't want to eat, and may cause us to eat out of boredom. So eat when you're eating. Get a plate, go to the table, enjoy some time, not doing anything other than enjoying your meal. So next, my next pointer will probably result in a lot of drop off from this webinar. So maybe a lot of people are going to hang up, but I would welcome you to consider your alcohol intake. Despite what many of us like to think, alcohol does not improve our sleep. In fact, it disrupts our sleep and it decreases our immunity, which most of us can't afford, especially at this time. So if we can regulate our eating schedule, stick to a regular routine with our eating schedule, we may experience more regulated energy. Those routines may reduce the impact of hunger and some of those physical symptoms that can impact our mood and anxiety. Those symptoms can become worse when we're not feeling physically well. And it can also reduce the cognitive and emotional impacts that could follow from having an unhealthy diet for some people. So things like concentration problems, guilt, worry, shame, emotions like that. So if we stick to that regular routine, we're less vulnerable to some of these physical and cognitive problems. Okay, so that's the first prong of the regular activity schedule. The second piece of it is regular participation in enjoyable activities. Now, many of us will need to reconsider our perspective of what's important to us and what is enjoyable to us, because we can't do many of the things we're used to doing. The key here is that every day we are doing something that we enjoy and that we're doing something that is meaningful to us. Now, this doesn't have to be big. You don't have to go pick up a new hobby or do anything to change the world. You can do something simple like light a candle, play some pleasant music. As long as the activity is pleasant for you and meaningful to you, it will help to maintain good mental health. Now, if you're struggling to come up with ideas because your routine has changed, you can't do what you're used to doing, one thing to consider is to think about your values. What's important to you? What do you value? And then brainstorm activities that fall under those values. For example, if you value giving back to your community and you used to volunteer somewhere, well, you probably can't do that now. But what things can you do to give back to your community? Maybe writing a few letters, making a donation if you're in that kind of situation, even spreading good cheer to your neighbor next door. So we have to revise and revisit how we can behave in a way that's consistent with our values and in a way that brings us pleasure during this time. Another piece of the enjoyable activity recommendation is to think about the difference between physical distancing and social distancing. There are volumes of research that indicates that being connected to people is critical for mental health. And so I advise that you stay physically distant as much as you can from people, but keep those social connections going. Again, we may have to be creative. Call people, FaceTime with people, shout at your neighbor over the fence. Anything you can do to maintain those social connections will potentially help you feel better emotionally and keep your mental health in check. Again, the key to these activities is that you do something daily. A lot of people have found that those activities are easily overlooked. They don't have time, they don't have motivation. And sometimes adding these activities to your schedule can help make sure they don't, that they're not overlooked. If you're having trouble, more trouble in terms of identifying activities that you might find enjoyable, just Google enjoyable activities list and lists of activities will come up. There are even specific lists that have been developed since the isolation has started that give ideas for how to engage in meaningful activities at home. Okay, so that was kind of a lot on activities. Let's move on to sleep. So we've covered eating, we've covered enjoyable activities, and now we can talk about sleep. So just as there are recommendations for healthy eating, there are also recommendations for how to achieve healthy sleep to ensure that you are well rested and that your sleep quality is good. If you want more information on this, you can check out the National Sleep Foundation website. They have a list of strategies you can use, and I'll review some of those now. So the key to having good sleep is to stick to the schedule, stick to the schedule, stick to the schedule. Whether it's Monday or Saturday, it's really strongly recommended that we go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. In addition to that, having a bedtime routine, kids aren't the only ones who need bedtime routines, but having a bedtime routine can help cue our bodies and our brains that it's time for sleep. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but if you engage in a few calming activities right before bed, your body and brain will know that sleep is coming, and it will help you fall asleep more easily. One other strategy that people may not be as aware of is that the bed is for sleeping only. Again, now that many of us are working from home, we may be tempted to work in bed, read in bed, watch TV in bed. Particularly for those of us who have trouble sleeping, this can really confuse our bodies and our brains. And so we want our bodies and our brains to associate the bed with sleep. So limit as much as you can working, reading, watching TV in bed. Many of you are probably more familiar with the general guidelines for achieving healthy sleep. So limiting screens before bed, have your bedroom cool and dark, which can be difficult in a Tallahassee summer or spring. Exercise, but not too close to bedtime. Those kinds of things that we've all heard before. Might be good to try some of those things out now. So if a number of people dropped out when I recommended considering your alcohol intake, I expect that more people may start to hang up after I give this recommendation. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the movie The Incredibles. There is a character on there who says, no capes for the superheroes. My recommendation for you regarding sleep is no naps, no naps, no naps. We can see that if we nap during the day, we may have a harder time falling asleep at night. Our sleep will be less restorative. We're tired the next day. We want a nap. And that cycle snowballs extremely quickly. So as much as you can, try to avoid the naps. Okay, for those of you who are remaining, next I have some tips on if you have trouble sleeping. So if you have trouble sleeping, don't watch the clock. Estimate if you're in bed for a little while, you're not falling asleep, get out of bed after about 20 minutes. Don't worry too much about the time. Get out of bed about after 20 minutes, go to the couch, relax for 15 minutes without a screen, read something boring, listen to some quiet music, and then go try again. You can repeat that a few times, 20 minutes of trying to fall asleep, 15 minutes of relaxation out of your bed. Then, even though you're tired because you didn't sleep well during the night, stick to the schedule in the morning. So wake up at the time you were supposed to wake up, try not to nap during the day, and then the next night you should be sufficiently tired that you should be able to get to sleep. If you have trouble falling asleep or even going back to sleep in the middle of the night, one strategy to use is called paced breathing or deep breathing. And the way that we do this is to inhale for a certain number of counts. I like 4 counts, 8 is too long for me, but inhale for 4 counts, exhale as if you're breathing out through a straw for longer than the inhale. And while you're doing that, count. So you can inhale for a count of 4, exhale as if you're breathing through a straw. And while you're doing that, focus on your counting, or some people like to use a little mantra. So they could say inhale, and then when they exhale, they say relax to themselves. If your mind wanders away from your breath, away from your counting, just bring it back. We don't want that worry train to spiral out of control. Bring your thoughts back to your breath, back to your breathing, and that should help you relax. It's okay if your mind wanders a lot. This takes some practice, but relaxing in this way can help you fall asleep more easily. Okay, so we covered eating routines, routines of enjoyable activities, and sleeping routines, and that is a lot. So don't fret. Don't worry. You don't have to do it all at once. You may just want to choose 1 or 2 changes to make. Try those for a week. Maybe have a competition with one of your friends to be accountable, and forgive yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Change is hard. If these things were easy, we would all be doing them and you wouldn't need me. So change is hard. These routines are difficult, but if you try 1 or 2 things, they may help you feel better. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is shift a little bit to specific strategies for coping. The regular routines may help keep many of us afloat, but if you need some extra strategies, I can cover some of those now. I'll give you 3 strategies that are more practical strategies, and then 3 strategies that we use during evidence-based treatment for mood and anxiety disorders. And those are for anybody to use. You don't need to have a psychological disorder to have them be useful. So the first practical strategy I would recommend is to limit your exposure to the news. Be as informed as you need to be, and then consider the costs and benefits of any more than that. There is some research to show that overconsumption of news can increase anxiety and can prolong recovery after the stressful event is over. So consider how much news you actually need. The second strategy I touched on a little bit a minute ago, involves forgiveness and flexibility, being more understanding, being less judgmental of ourselves and of others. We could spend a whole lot of time beating ourselves up or judging other people about how they're not as productive or they're less patient or whatever is going on. Normally, those things don't help us be more productive or be more patient or do the things that we need to do, and then we just feel bad. So nothing is getting done, and then we feel bad. So I would advise as much as you can to be forgiving and flexible with yourself and with others. In line with that, it's quite important to talk and listen. Talk about your experience with somebody that you trust. Listen to the experience of others, and you'll find that you likely are not alone in your experience. And we know, again, through research, that avoiding our emotions does not make them go away. In fact, they can become stronger and maybe more disruptive the longer we try to avoid. So talk to somebody, write your feelings down, and allow yourself to experience those emotions. Okay, so next I'd like to shift to some more treatment-based strategies for coping. And two of these, all three of them actually, rely on the connection between our bodies, our thoughts, and our emotions. And with the first two, we'll target our bodies or our physical sensations, our behavior, as a way to calm our thoughts and calm our emotions. The first one is progressive muscle relaxation. Online, you might see it as PMR. So with PMR, we tense specific muscle groups in a particular order sequentially. We tense and we hold and then relax. And we go down our bodies from head to toe. And what happens is we become super tense, and then it swings like a pendulum over to the other side, and we're more relaxed than we were in the first place. There are good online guides that I'll share with you at the end for guided progressive muscle relaxation. The second treatment-based strategy is that paced breathing that I mentioned a minute ago. Focusing on your breathing, inhaling and exhaling in a slow, measured way, again, helps disrupt that cycle of physical agitation, worried, angry, depressed thoughts, and worried, angry, and depressed emotions. The third strategy, again taken from evidence-based treatment, involves disrupting the catastrophic thinking cycle, the anxious thinking cycle, the angry, the depressed thinking cycle. And in fact, some of these thinking cycles are made worse by our thinking, particularly by inaccurate thinking. So many of us are not used to thinking about our thoughts, but if we write down our thoughts, then the next step is to examine whether there's evidence that your thoughts are true. And if they're not completely true, what's more accurate? So we can have a thought, especially at this time, I'm a failure at everything. That's not helpful, and it's probably not accurate. I would doubt that anyone is a failure at everything, every single thing. So what's more true? What's more true might be, well, I'm a little or a lot less productive at work. It also might be true that I'm less patient with my kids. Those are things we can work with. Those are things we can improve. It's hard to put dents in that thought of I'm a complete failure at everything. So let's look at what's actually true. Also, on the flip side of that, there may be something that you're not failing at. You might be doing something well. What is that? The key here to accurate thinking is not positive thinking. We don't need everyone thinking that the world is sunshine and roses right now, or that everybody's knocking their work out of the park, because that's probably not true either. So it's not about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. Another way our thoughts can get in the way of helping us feel well is that, or that can keep that depressed or anxious or angry mood going, is a lack of problem solving. We may catastrophize, we may think about these terrible, horrible outcomes, and then we stop and we don't engage in problem solving. So give yourself a chance to think about some of these feared outcomes. If you're worried about catching the virus, if you're worried about losing your job, for example, think through what would you do if that happened? And you most of the time will find that you have options. Then, if those feared outcomes do occur, they are not good by any stretch, but you will know that you have some strategies in place to work towards solving those problems, or at least towards coping. But stopping at the catastrophe without generating some solutions or ideas for how you're going to cope will keep that anxious mood, keep that depressed mood, and keep that anger going. Okay, so last piece of what I had to share with you is about seeking help and resources for help. Maybe the simplest guidance I can give you is to, if you want help, seek help. Nobody really can tell you that you shouldn't go see somebody. The second piece is if you are experiencing such significant distress that it's interfering with your day, or impairment in your day-to-day activities, you don't like how you're doing, you can't get your work done, you're having trouble getting out of bed. If there's disruption in your life that you feel like you can't fix on your own, or that's interfering, go ahead and seek some help. Also, if you are experiencing thoughts, actions, urges, or even steps towards self-injury or suicide, please get help right away. You can call 911, and you can also call the suicide prevention hotline, the national hotline, and that number is 1-800-273-TALK, and there are people available 24 hours a day who can help you. So if you feel like you need help, or if you're experiencing distress, impairment, or thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please reach out and get some help. Now on your screen, I think you can see a list of resources. This is not exhaustive, but these are some things that I thought might be helpful to some of you. Here in Tallahassee, we have 211 Big Bend, but 211 is actually a nationwide organization that provides resources, and it's in Canada also, provides links to people in the community for mental health, physical health, vocational rehabilitation. There are services for veterans, for people who were formerly incarcerated. If you give them a call in your area, they can help you link to the resources that you need. Also, the FSU College of Medicine has a resource list. If you Google College of Medicine resource list, the first thing that will come up is a mental health resource list. If you're not in Tallahassee, a local university, a psychology department, or a medical school may have a similar resource list for you. You can always reach out to your primary care physician. I won't go through all of these because you can all read, and maybe we can have time for questions. But really quickly, there's a hotline here, the National Distress Hotline, some telehealth resources, both Talkspace and BetterHelp will provide you with some online treatment. And then those are some of the links that I mentioned earlier regarding relaxation. Dartmouth College has a really excellent website that can walk you through relaxation and paced breathing, and there are a few other apps below that that you can try out. And then my last word of caution, if we have time for questions, my last word of caution is that the internet is full of inaccurate information. So please go to these reputable websites that I have listed here to find information that might be helpful. Don't diagnose yourself. That's usually not helpful either, but there are people that will give you help and that you can trust if you reach out to some of these resources listed.
Thank you so much.
All that I have, sure.
Yes, Dr. Kemper, I knew we had spoken previously that I may chime in, but I knew your information was going to be so good that I didn't need to chime in. And I'm so thankful for your expertise. Again, I think it is spot on for what many may be feeling. I want to ask you a few questions that were submitted ahead of time by those who registered early to dig a little bit deeper, or maybe even reiterate some of those great points. So most of us working from home recognize a hyper connection, that we were already very connected.
Mhm.
We may have a lot of meetings in this format during the day, while also trying to balance families, whether we are caretakers of parents or children. How do you, what are your recommendations for those who are balancing a new routine? I loved the points that you gave about finding that routine, ensuring that you're keeping it. But I know for some, it feels almost impossible because you've got little ones where you haven't had them throughout the day, or you may have parents that you're having to check in a different way regarding different health issues. What advice do you give for that sort of stress and tension and anxiety that may cause?
Sure. Well, I think the key there is to recognize that it is impossible. It is impossible to be a full-time parent, for example, and work from home and care for everybody else. There are not enough hours in the day. There are not enough coping resources to make all of that happen 100% all of the time. So that's when I say this to my students a lot too. Find the balance that works for you and then be forgiving. And so if you need to let work go for a little while and you're in a position where you can do that, then maybe that's something to ask for. Kids, it's not ideal. Maybe they need a little more screen time so everyone can cope. And so what I would recommend is to trust your judgment, find the balance that works for you, forgive yourself because you cannot do it all the time. Think about the thoughts that you're having, probably a lot of shoulds. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Check to see if those are really accurate or not. And remember that the better we take care of ourselves, the more we can take care of other people. But we just can't do it all the time, and that's okay. We will get back to something that looks more normal, hopefully soon, maybe not soon, but we will get there. And right now, everyone is doing the best they can. Just do the best you can.
Yes. Let me ask you about the values, the participating in activities that bring you enjoyment. And when you don't leave home and you're going for a walk and you're coming back to your office, that's also your home, and you're evaluating what those activities may be. Tell me how one might, if I value being outdoors, but I'm constantly going on a walk because that's how can you stretch that to change that? Take me through that exercise that you would talk through someone with.
Right. So I would think about, so if the value is being outdoors, taking a walk is a great strategy. And this is a time to really, really brainstorm and get creative. So one thing to do is go online and search for things to do outside. But I think about, my neighbor has a birdhouse, and I've never thought about bird watching, but maybe it's time to start trying to identify some of those birds. A lot of the stores in town have curbside pickup. Can we plant a garden or get some seeds? We also want to think about things that are low cost, because finances are really tight for a lot of people right now. But does that look like, being outside, enjoying the flowers, enjoying the birds, taking a different route on your walk, flying a kite? You kind of bring back the kid in some of us, right on the sidewalk with chalk, though you can't find chalk anywhere because it was hoarded with toilet paper. But those kinds of things, I would encourage people to be creative and to not be judgmental, and to try something out if they think it might be enjoyable. Same thing with inside activities. Maybe you've never done a crossword puzzle before. Well, maybe now's the time to try that. There are a lot of things we can do to get creative with those activities.
Right. So back to those who may have little ones at home, I think even the things like the breathing techniques, it's never too soon to teach those techniques, I think. What advice do you have for children who may be coping with stress in a different way, and parents may not have recognized that in their children before and are seeing it in different ways? What other advice do you have for parents in helping their children adjust?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. And it is important to remember that they are experiencing stress also. Their routines are thrown off. They might not be old enough to know what's going on, but they know that their routine is different. They know that something isn't right. You are correct. There are breathing and progressive muscle relaxation guided exercises online for kids. And so if parents Google those, they can find some resources. Other things to do just as a parent in terms of emotional coaching in a way is to model the appropriate expression of emotion. You know, to say something like, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm going to go take some deep breaths. And then encourage age-appropriate expression of emotions in your kids, and understand that they're going to flip out sometimes. But again, being more forgiving of them when that happens. Another thing to do with kids, just like for us, is to keep them on a routine as much as you can. Get them up at a reasonable hour. If they're doing schoolwork, have them do their schoolwork, have lunch at a regular time. So keep the cycle going and make it as predictable as possible, because right now the environment being predictable and stable is key for kids and managing their stress.
Very good. I think the resources you provided are outstanding, and we'll be sure to share those. I have one last question before we let you go. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, in all of your FSU memory.
Oh gosh. Man, put me on the spot. My favorite FSU memory. I have so many. Graduate school was a blast. So my favorite FSU memory, man, I think generally the ease of all of the sporting events is really a highlight for me. I come from Chicago, and it's not easy or inexpensive to go to a sporting event there. So the ease of being able to see really good sports so close by and without hassle is really something I value. And then my graduation day, that has to be up there. Earning my Ph.D. from the clinical psychology program was a great day after a long time of hard work. So that's high up there.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Kemper. We are better because alumni like you are doing such great work in the world. And for us right here in our own community, we're so thankful. We want everyone to know who's paying attention with us on these Wednesday webinar series. Next Wednesday, you will hear from our Career Center, Scott Maynard and Leslie Milley. We'll be speaking on ways to engage current students through virtual career opportunities, through maybe some unemployment issues, and how you can help. So for more information and resources from your Alumni Association, please visit our homepage and click on our online resources. You'll see that pop up at the bottom there. We look forward to engaging with you. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you, and I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you, and go Noles.